Andrea, Sue. I don't see Diane yet.
You know,
Unless I'm
Graham,
missing-
Diane came to the main office to participate in person, but then decided she would rather be virtual with everyone else. So she's on her way home.
Okay, so she may be a couple minutes late.
She may be a couple minutes late.
Okay. Well, we have a large agenda, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't think there's anything too critical here at the beginning. So this is the October 22nd meeting of the Board of Waterworks Trustees. We have a consent agenda today that includes the minutes of the September 28th, 2021 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, the minutes of the October 12th, 2021 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, financial statements, a list of payments for September 2021, summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, and the establishment of the next meeting date of November 23rd, 2021. Is there a motion to move the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second? Do I have a second on the consent agenda? Am I missing something? Am I not hearing it? I have a motion from Andrea.
See a note
Joel.
from Joel in the chat that he seconds it.
All right, a silent second from Joel. I thank you. Any comments, questions from the board or comments from you, Ted?
Graham, my only comment is that there's a CEO approved expenditure of 29,000 related to the website implementation. It was budgeted in a prior year, so it wasn't technically budgeted this year, but it was budgeted. So not a significant issue, but there is one, which usually there is not.
All right. Joel is signing out and signing back in. And so we'll give him just a second to pop back on.
Graham, can you hear me?
I can. You are back and you are with us loud and clear.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Very good. Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
and I don't see Diane yet.
All right. So that's going to move us to our next section of the meeting, and this is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for people to address the board on matters of importance. Is anyone from the public here today that would like to address the board? I'm not seeing any. Michelle, do you see any hands raised or?
I do not, and I am currently the only person in the boardroom, so.
There you go. Okay. So with that, I'll close that portion of the meeting and move into item 3A. And item 3A is 2021 employee benefit insurance renewals. Before I seek a motion, Ted, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
You know, Graham, there's a lot of information here. A couple of things that I will point out. The board will recall that a year ago, from a medical insurance perspective, we began a partnership with IGHCP, which is the Iowa Governmental Health Care Plan, a group of other municipal entities that have teamed together to create a much larger group. And they actually renew their insurance on a fiscal year basis, so July 1. So we got an 18-month quote from them, which is good until the end of June. So there is no change in the medical insurance premiums at this point in the year. We have budgeted an assumed 7% increase at mid-year, but there is no change in medical insurance premiums for this year. The other thing that I will offer is that we are changing vision insurance carriers, or proposing to change from Avisus to Delta Vision, which is somehow affiliated with Delta Dental. We're making that change for a couple of reasons. One, it's cheaper. And two, it includes an annual eye exam, which used to be covered under our health insurance, but no longer is. So those are really the only two changes. The rest is pretty much status quo with very little increase.
Any comments or questions? Ted, the 7% increase that you budgeted, is that something that the provider suggested? Where did that number come from?
You know, that was something they said that their historic average increase has been about 6%. And so we went with just a little bit more than that, assuming that they would be in the same ballpark.
Right.
Going forward. We didn't
Well, that's-
specifically ask them that though, Graham. I want to be clear. We just based
That's
on
right.
what they've told us historically.
Well, let's hope that that's a number that's close. Any other comments or questions on item 3A? Hearing and seeing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote on item 3A.
I don't have a motion or a second.
Oh, that's a silly me. Do I have a motion on this item?
So moved.
A motion from Joel and a second?
Second.
Second from Andrew, I believe. Now, Michelle, may you?
Nope,
record the
that
vote.
was Diane.
Oh,
Second from
Diane's with
Diane.
us. Excellent. Thank you, Diane.
Okay, Ashburn,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to item 3B, and this is a 2022 corporate insurance. And this time, Ted, why don't you fill us in on this? And I promise to get a motion in a second after you're done.
Fair enough, Graham. The corporate insurance renewal, all of our various corporate insurance renewals were covered at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. In some detail, there really isn't any change from what was covered at Finance and Audit. The insurance industry is going through some transition at this point in a number of areas, primarily due to what I would call extreme events, kind of across the country, but also including here in Iowa. We believe, though, that we have received favorable quotes for most of our insurance coverages. There was a little bit of give and take, mostly give on our part. A few actually went down slightly, but the full book of business here that we brought to the board for approval, it represents an increase of about 10% overall, which we think is favorable given the current climate. So we would recommend that the board accept the insurance program renewal as proposed and submitted by LMC.
All right, with that, I will seek a motion on this item. Is there a motion? Motion, I should read it, I guess, shouldn't I? A motion to accept the insurance program renewal submitted by LMC Insurance and Risk Management. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a second for Sue. Any comments or questions on this item? The only thing that I will add, and Rick and John, if you can guide us when the time is appropriate, we had some discussion at Finance and Audit, and Ted and I have discussed too. Public discussion of cybersecurity is a
Which
difficult one.
You're going to be
because
on a meeting
often-
when I leave to get my test. What should
Yeah,
I do with the
I mean, they
kids?
can stay in here. Just leave them in.
Okay.
I'll take them out after.
Peter, you are on a microphone.
How long is?
Sorry.
Anyway, the public discussion of a cybersecurity is tricky because when we discuss cybersecurity, things like coverages and our tactics and that sort of thing become public, which makes us vulnerable potentially to those who would attack us from cybersecurity. So John and Rick, what I'm asking is that as we go forward, should we consider, and if we do consider, going into closed session to discuss items like cybersecurity that public disclosure could put us at risk? And I'm not asking you to say anything now, but I think the time is going to come, maybe and even as soon as December, where we could have, where we need to have some sort of a discussion that is kept confidential.
Certainly, Graham. I think what we've done at this point is simply refrain from putting sensitive information in the public materials.
Right. But as I say, we may, and we can discuss this further, Rick, and seek your counsel, but we may need to have a more in-depth discussion about our strategy around how we make decisions on cybersecurity, what levels of coverage we have, and that sort of thing. And those things, it may be in our benefit not to have that in public session. So.
Understood.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments on that from the board? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second on item 3B. Michelle, would you record the vote?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the next item is item 3C, and this is to receive and file the cost of service report. We've talked about this a lot, but Ted, I have a feeling you might be able to summarize where we are on this.
Yes, Graham, you are correct. We've talked about it a number of times. It was presented in some detail at the October Finance and Audit meeting. We perform a cost of service analysis annually. That analysis assigns costs to various groups of customers based on the services they receive, and then those assignments of cost help inform rate setting for the coming year. The cost of service, as I said, was reviewed at the October F&A meeting. A draft of the cost of service study for 2022 is actually included in the board materials today for anyone's consideration and review. But at this time, we would simply recommend that the board receive and file the 2022 cost of service study.
So I'm looking for a motion to receive and file the cost of service study. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions on this item?
Yes, this is Diane, and I have a question for the staff. Did we receive any comments from any parties or any of our customers about the cost of service study or the validity of any of the conclusions that were reached in the cost of service study?
Amy, I'm going to let you comment when I'm done. And Diane, I'm going to say that I'm not aware that we received any comments about the cost of service specifically or the validity. We did receive a couple of comments about proposed rates, which is an item further down on the agenda. I think you're asking specifically though about the cost of service, the methodology and the result.
Right, I'm asking about the underlying substantive conclusions that were reached by our consultant in the cost of service study.
I received none. Amy, have you received any such comments?
No, I would say that I received some questions of clarification from one wholesale customer and their financial advisor. And I met with them just to talk about the calculations. There were no concerns expressed after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing or hearing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
All right, that moves us to item 3D, which perhaps is a little trickier. This is the approval of the proposed 2022 water rates. Ted, you have the floor.
Thank you, Graham. Here again, water rates, the discussion of water rates was presented at the October Finance and Audit Committee meeting. There were two options presented specifically for wholesale rate consideration. First option was what we referred to as the Raftellus recommended approach, which assigns some cost based on maximum day use of each participant or party. The other option was the more traditional approach, which we have historically used, which recovers all costs in a single volume rate. There was quite a bit of discussion at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and frankly, after the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, we received a couple of emails or letters from wholesale customers expressing their perspectives, frankly, on both sides, in favor of both options. But after the discussions, both during and following the F&A meeting, staff today is recommending that we stay with the more traditional approach of recovering costs from the wholesale customers in a single volume rate, with a rate increase of 15% in that group. Now, I do want to say that that's not what our rate consultant recommended, but in light of where we are in the regional discussions and the potential for a regional board to weigh in on rate setting methodology in the near future, we've decided that that's the most appropriate recommendation at this time. As noted in the memo, it is our perspective that if regionalization doesn't move forward, staff will recommend that we implement a Raftellus-like rate structure for wholesale customers going forward. Also, based on results of the cost of service study, staff is recommending the following rate increases: 10% for Des Moines outside city, which is a fairly small customer group in unincorporated areas adjacent to Des Moines; 7% for Polk County Rural Water District number 1, which is the Saylorville Water District and the Berwick Water District, both 7%; 3% for all other Des Moines Waterworks retail customers. That would include inside city, Polk County, and some others; 0% for the with storage customer class, which is Johnston specifically, but also Water Development Corp that has some small systems; and then 0% increases in all of the capital improvement fees that are assessed in various systems across both retail and total service customer groups. So very high level, quick summary of what was covered at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, Graham, but happy to answer questions or ask Amy to answer questions as needed.
Great. So I'm seeking a motion to approve the proposed rates according to the attached schedule to be effective for all water bills issued on or after April 1st, 2022, and direct staff to publish the adopted rates as provided by law. Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. And a second?
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Comments, questions?
Ted, I really appreciate your recommendation. I think we thoroughly discussed the options, and I think our priority right now is to do everything we can to get regionalization through. And I see we have some of those customers on the line with us. So hopefully this will be a green light for us to move ahead and finish this off before the end of the year.
Go ahead, Andrea.
So Stu's comment alluding to some of those folks being on the line kind of answers my question. I know that we received some comments about the rate increases, and I was just curious if our customers knew what the plan was if regionalization didn't move forward, if they were made aware of what this proposal was saying.
Andrea, I would say that they have not been made aware yet beyond what is in the recommendation to the board and what is being discussed here in public meeting. Once the board approves the recommendation, we can certainly make them aware of what we intend to do if regionalization does not proceed or progress, but we haven't done anything beyond putting it in the agenda item for this meeting.
Thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but we haven't really discussed that as a board. We know what the options are, but I mean, I don't think there's just because so many people do listen to these afterwards, there has not been a board decision as to what happens should regionalization not take place unless I'm not aware of something.
Sue, that's correct. There hasn't been any board decision, and I would say that even with the statements that are in this agenda item, indicating that it would be staff's intent to recommend something in the future if regionalization doesn't happen. Even approving this recommendation does not approve that future action. Okay, so we're not asking you to approve something that might happen a year from now. We're just indicating that from a staff perspective, our discussions at this point lead us to believe that would be the appropriate thing to do a year from now. But that is not part of this pending recommendation, this pending motion, and it would have to be addressed as a separate item a year from now.
Thank you.
Joel, Diane, anything to add?
So I think you raise a good point. Good to clarify that we are making a decision for this year only and not for next year. However, I will say I am supportive, when it comes time to making a decision for next year. At this moment, I am supportive of eventually implementing a Raftellus approach. In fact, if anything, I think we're erring on the side of caution here. And I think there are reasons to move forward with the Raftellus approach at this point. However, I recognize the value in giving our customers further notice, further time to adjust to this different approach, especially in light of the regionalization discussions we're in the middle of. So I think moving forward with the quote business as usual rate structure makes sense for the time being, but I do think it's important for others in the community to recognize that there is, we do have reason to favor this Raftellus approach. It makes sense. It's what's most equitable. And I think it's the future of what how rate paying should be designed. But perhaps a little more time is needed before that's appropriate.
Yes, I asked the question with respect to the cost of service study to say the objections that we have received have not been based on issues within the cost of service study or disagreements with what it shows. It's been a timing question and a question of whether we should do that now that we are wrapping up negotiations on on the issue of reorganization. So, if we do that, then there will be many people at the table if we do that successfully, but the issues will not go away and they will have to be grappled with and discussed. So, as I said, these issues will remain, but I'm willing to wait and see, who will be at the table to do that.
Great, thank you. Diane, I agree. And Joel, I especially agree with your comment about supporting a Raftellus type model in the future. I agree with that statement and imagine that a year from now, that's where I'll be. The one thing I'd like to add, Ted, I think that having been on this board for a number of years now, I appreciate the hours and hours and hours of work that the staff has spent studying our rate setting process, talking with our customers, engaging with consultants like Raftellus. I think that we are in a good position. We're as good a position as we've ever been to understand how we set rates and how we should set rates. And that credit goes to what I think is an outstanding staff at Des Moines Waterworks to have put in the time and effort and to do the research needed to make a complicated decision like this. I mean, whether regionalization becomes a reality, which we all hope it does, or we continue to serve the region as a provider like we do today, thanks to that work, we're just in a lot better position than we were not too many years ago when I came on the board. So my thanks to everybody involved in this process.
I have to agree, Graham. Amy has a great team, and Michelle Holland, who you have seen present a number of times to the board. Donna Heckman is also on with this real core group there that does a great job.
And they put up with people like me who have very strange questions sometimes, and they're very patient.
Indeed.
Graham, while your comments would have been a perfect last word, I'm thinking of an initial question I have for Ted. I want to throw in here. I'm thinking that we have spent a long time talking about, I believe it would be interclass equity, I believe is the right word, as far as rates go. But I'm thinking if someone's watching for the first time today, or people are looking back at this decision, maybe it's worthwhile, Ted, for you to just give a really brief explanation of why the rates increases would be different for different classes here, and what it is we're trying to accomplish with that. I know we've talked about it a lot in the past, but just to.
Yeah, I will.
For the record.
Take a quick swing here, Joel, and then I'm going to offer Amy the opportunity to dust up a little bit what I share. But the American Waterworks Association has a rate setting manual that goes into great detail, and the premise of the rate setting philosophy there is that the customers pay for the services they receive. Wholesale retail customers receive different types of services from us as the wholesale provider, and those services tend to increase in cost at different rates. And so while it sometimes is politically more favorable or easier to do across the board rate increases for everyone, the same percentage for everyone, what you end up with is classes of customers that are paying more cost than should realistically be allocated to them, and classes of customers that are paying less. There's some subsidization that can go on there just by virtue of the fact of what services each class of customers is receiving. What we've tried to do here, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, is recognize that the costs of those services increase at different rates, and try to apply the costs more appropriately and raise rates in a way that balances the cost recovery with the actual cost centers. So Amy, is there anything I missed there that you would clarify?
You didn't miss anything, but one thing I would add is that, we have made great progress. Joel, you referenced the inter-class equity versus the intra-class equity, and we've spent a lot of time.
I'm afraid I got mixed those up. But.
Well, that's all right. No, that's fine. We've spent a lot of time talking about the intra-class equity within that wholesale purchase capacity class, and we can get caught up in that. But I think it's really important for us to step back and recognize the progress that we've made in inter-class. So among the classes, when we started this, the purchase capacity class was at 80% of their cost recovery. And with this cost of service and with this rate approach that is before you for approval, they would be at 93% cost recovery. So, we are working hard. That is recognizing we've had some pretty significant increases in that class to get us to that point. And, we're fortunate that we have wholesale customers who understand what we're trying to do. So I think we should feel good about where we've come on the inter-class, and the work is really in the intra.
Joel, I think that was an excellent last word. Any other comments or questions? All right. With that, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Muns.
Yes.
All right, moving on to item 3E, which is appropriate. We've had the cost of service received and filed. We've set rates for the next year. So the next order of business is the proposed 2022 budget and establishing a public hearing as the date of the November 2021 board meeting. Ted, what do you have to add to this item before I seek a motion?
You know, Graham, I'll be brief because here again, we had a presentation on October F&A in some detail. There's a lot of information there in the packet. We're asking the board to establish a public hearing today as the date of next month's board meeting, at which time we will approve the budget. A nearly $80 million budget between operating and capital, a 4.2% increase in the capital budget, which is primarily related to chemicals, residuals, and labor. A lot of detail. We covered it pretty extensively at F&A, but happy to answer any questions if there are any before we establish the date of the public hearing.
So I'm seeking a motion to establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the November 2021 board meeting to act on the passage of the 2022 budget and direct staff to publish notice as set forth in Des Moines Waterworks Board Policy Manual. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
And a second, Joel. Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburn,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Muns.
Yes.
All right, so this moves us to item 3F, and this is a resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding water revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012A, dated October 30th, 2012. We've discussed this some in committee meetings, Ted, but why don't you give us a recap?
Absolutely, Graham. This is the first of two refundings we will touch on tonight. This is a small one, $600,000 remaining in principal from a $4.6 million bond issue. Those bonds were actually issued in 2004 for the McMullen ASR facility. They were refinanced in 2012 as our 2012A bonds. Not a huge savings here in terms of interest, but this is something that we decided to do as we're doing the other one. We're going through all the same steps. We're going to go ahead and refund this, redeem these bonds. The actual out-of-pocket here is only about $140,000 because of the $460,000 that is held in debt service reserve. So it's a fairly small transaction in terms of bonds, but we are asking the board to adopt the resolution authorizing redemption of our 2012A series bonds.
So I'm seeking a motion, and this will require a roll call vote, of course, like all of them, to adopt the resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding water revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012A of the City of Des Moines, State of Iowa, dated October 30, 2012, and directing notice be given. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And a second.
Michelle, could I ask you to scroll up and show that resolution? Because it's a detailed thing that the board has just moved.
Yes.
I think it might be appropriate to actually display it. Yeah, there you go. Up through 5 sections. And it's my understanding, Graham, that the motion relates to these detailed motions as prepared by bond counsel.
I agree. I think all the board members agree. Do you? Any other comments or questions? Michelle, will you record the vote, please?
Ashburn,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Muns.
Yes.
All right, sounding a little bit like the last item, a whole lot like the last item is item 3G. This is a resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding water revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012B, dated October 30th, 2012. Ted, anything different or something else to add on this one?
The only thing I would add, Graham, here is just for the board's information, these were bonds originally issued in 2006, refunded in 2012. They were issued for construction of the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant and the joint east side storage and pumping facilities. $39.4 million worth of bonds with a number of participants among our wholesale and total service customers. You can see the breakdown there of the responsibility for the remaining $12.3 million. You can see the debt service reserve amounts and the net owed by each of the participants. We have received resolution from each of the participants who are not total service, who will not simply have funds taken from their water account by Des Moines. We have received resolutions indicating their intention to pay by the date certain listed in the document here, which is in November. Sorry, I don't remember the exact date, but those are the differences, Graham. Otherwise, it's the same concept and in need of the same resolution, a similar resolution.
Right. So as Rick pointed out on the previous item, this motion relates to the multi-page resolution that's attached on this document. And so make sure that you read through that. But this motion and roll call vote is to adopt that resolution, the resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding water revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012B of the City of Des Moines, State of Iowa, dated October 30, 2012, and directing notice be given. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on this item?
Yeah, Graham, I think it's important if Ted or Amy could maybe review. This really does help us in a way pave the path forward on regionalization. And I think it would be nice for anyone listening, because we do have a number online, to understand that and why we're making this decision.
Again, Sue, I'm happy to take a swing and then we'll let Amy follow up. But one of the big hurdles that we had related to regionalization when we started our discussions in earnest a few years ago was the bonds, the debt that existed, and the fact that the bonds had been issued with all of our facilities as basically collateral for those bonds. So transferring those assets when they were collateral for a number of bonds that were outstanding was a little bit messy. These bonds were not due to be paid off until 2025. The fact that they're callable and the fact that everyone is interested in paying them off is beneficial from a regionalization perspective. It clears one hurdle for us, and that the assets will essentially be clear of this encumbrance. I also think it's kind of a testament to the strength of the water system that we've been able to build as a region, and the fact that everyone is in a position to be able to pay off these bonds, presumably from their water funds. I think it's a real positive and a great example of how we have collaborated regionally for many years on very large projects to the benefit of all of the water customers in the metro.
Thank you, Ted.
Any other comments or questions on this item? All right, with that, I'll ask Michelle to record a vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Muns.
Yes.
All right, with that, we're on to item 3H in our marathon agenda that has item 3M as a final item, but 3H is acceptance of Highway G14 feeder main. Ted?
Very straightforward project here, Graham. This is a feeder main, a transmission project that the city of Norwalk needed to have installed to take advantage of the new booster pump station that we constructed jointly for them and the city of Cumming and the city of West Des Moines. The project is done. There were no change orders, very minimal changes in estimate, or I mean in estimated quantities. The work is complete and we're asking that the board accept this project completed by On Track Construction.
So I'm seeking a motion to accept Highway G14 feeder main completed by On Track Construction LLC in the amount of $1,270,023.70. Is there a motion to that effect?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Motion and a
Second.
second? And a second.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions on item 3H? Hearing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
All right, moving us on to 3I. This is the award of joint East Side Booster Station hypochlorite feed system. Ted?
Last
Oh,
month,
I'm sorry. Let me do this the appropriate way, Ted. I didn't realize this was a public hearing. And so with that, this again is the award, the joint East Side Booster Station hypochlorite feed system. I will open the public hearing and see if there are any comments from the public regarding the form of contract plans and specifications and estimated cost. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to comment on this item? Or Ted, have we received any comments?
Graham, we have received no comments.
All right, seeing no further comments, I will close the public hearing and I will seek a motion for adoption of form of contract plans and specifications and estimated costs. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I have a motion from Joel. Is there a second?
Second.
And I have a second. I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
All right, with that, Ted, I will turn it over to you for an analysis of the bids received.
Graham, we had a number of prospective bidders pick up the plans. 3 bids were submitted. The low bid by CL Carroll, $202,000. It's 1% over the engineer's estimate, which is $200,000. CL Carroll has successfully completed a number of projects for Des Moines Waterworks, and staff would recommend that the board award the project to CL Carroll.
So I'm seeking a motion to award the joint East Side Booster Station hypochlorite feed system contract to CL Carroll Company Incorporated in the amount of $202,000 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract. Is there a motion?
So moved, Graham.
Now we've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You're all very slow today.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I will ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Maybe you
Graham,
all just.
I know Andrea keeps turning off her mic, but I want to hear that new baby cry. I'm hoping.
Andrea
Show us
does not want to hear that baby cry.
We
Baby's
do.
not crying. Baby is in grandma's arms upstairs. So
Perfect. Item 3J is request authorization to solicit bids for the LP Moon pumping station, pump number 8, and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the November 2021 board meeting. Ted?
Graham, the LP Moon pumping station is a very significant regional facility that is actually located out north of Hickman Road in Clive. It serves the communities of West Moines, Waukee, and Clive, as well as Urbandale and Xenia. Initially, when it was constructed in 1996, there were 6 pumps installed, 3 that served Urbandale and Xenia, 3 that served West Moines, Waukee, and Clive. The West Moines, Waukee, Clive side has really reached its capacity in terms of the 3 pumps that are there to serve those 3 communities. There are periods of time in the summer when all 3 of those pumps run for extended periods, which means if one of them fails, there would be a potential for shortage. This project is intended to install a 4th pump on that side of the facility to provide redundancy, not really any extra capacity from the station, but just a 4th redundant pump. It's a little confusing, and I don't want to make it more confusing, but there are 6 pumps there now. Spots 7 and 8 are open. We're going to put this one in spot 8, which will make it the 7th pump. Not that that's important, but if anybody was counting pumps, I just wanted to be clear. The entire cost of this project will be paid by West Des Moines, Waukee, and Clive. There is already an agreement in place that identifies how those costs will be shared. They'll also pay Des Moines Waterworks engineering costs, so there's no financial impact to Des Moines Waterworks for this regional project. It's simply a project in support of the communities that use that facility. And we're asking the board for permission to bid the project.
Excellent. So I'm looking for a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the LP Moon Pumping Station, pump number 8 contract, and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the November 2021 board meeting, and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Look how quick you are.
I
And a second?
know.
Second.
And a second from Sue. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
All right, moving into item 3K. This is the Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bond. We had a presentation on this last month. Ted, you want to explain where we are and what's being proposed here?
Absolutely, Graham. The folks from Polk County Water and Land Legacy came and presented to the board. As you mentioned, they asked the board to provide support for their referendum, both financially and through endorsement. Legal counsel has confirmed for us that Iowa code really doesn't allow the board to financially support such a referendum, but the board is at liberty to pass a motion or a resolution of support. Based on the positive feedback that we heard on the day of that presentation, staff has drafted up the resolution you see here for consideration by the board. If the board would like to support the Polk County Water and Land Legacy bond, which is intended to further conservation, preservation, and protection of water resources, specifically in Polk County, and something that certainly seems to align with our mission and values.
So I'm seeking a motion to pass the resolution that's printed in the board materials in support of the Polk County Water and Land Legacy Bond. We can either pass a motion referring to the statement that is printed in the documents, or if you wish, I can read it. I'll leave it to the person making the motion.
So moved without reading the entire document. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any comments or questions on this item?
I have one, Graham. I'm curious what other quasi-governmental entities or governmental entities have voiced their support. I know the Polk County Board of Supervisors have. I did a quick Google just to see if it had gone before the city of Des Moines, and I didn't see it. Would there be anyone on the call that could answer that for us?
I believe, Sue, there was a list included in the materials that were shared at the committee meeting. I apologize for not having those at my fingertips right now, but I can certainly find those, because I will not be able to recite the list, but can find them.
And kind of as a follow-on question to that, and you probably don't have any answer to this either. I also wondered if the other water boards in Polk County were providing resolutions with respect to this issue.
Not that I'm aware of, Diane. I do not recall them being on that list. There were other governmental entities, but there were no other water boards or water supply, public water supplies that I'm aware of. Let me see what I can find here quickly.
I am not sure if I can recall either. I mean, if we're looking for quasi-government.
Yeah, they have quite a list, but
I know the board of directors at the Botanical Garden supported a resolution, but I don't know anything further than that.
I mean, I fully support this. I just wondered.
And I do as
broadly.
well. I think when we get into making recommendations, you know, on something that for the voters.
Ed, would you like me to find and share it real quick?
pardon me, Michelle.
Would you like me to find and share that list from those materials real quick?
I would like
Okay.
that very much if you could put your finger on it or your
Sure.
cursor
Okay.
on
Sorry if I get clunky, hang tight.
Well, I'll go get that baby while we're waiting.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, look how happy Sue is. She gets what she asked for.
The photos are great, but a baby.
You were wishing we were in person so you could hold that baby, don't you?
Wouldn't do that, not during COVID to any
I
young.
know. Isn't that terrible? Isn't that the truth?
Well, Graham, remember how nervous we were when our kids were young and there was none of this?
Oh, I wasn't nervous at all.
I wasn't either. I figured everybody was better equipped than me to take care of my children.
I can understand that sentiment. Joel,
I
be
can
very
confirm
afraid.
there are lots of nerves.
Remind us, Joel, when is the due date?
Mid-December.
Late December. Oh, there
Soon.
we go.
Oh, man.
Look how cute.
Sleeping baby.
Oh,
Well, Alice Ann.
she's beautiful. She's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
You. She's got her Halloween garb on for Pleasant Hill trick-or-treating tonight.
Nice. Fun.
Is she a good baby, Andrea?
She is. She's quite the sleepy baby. So that's nice. Not a lot of crying unless we're hungry. Easily satisfied and back to bed.
That's what in my house, the second one was the one that, lulled us into thinking we should have a third one. This is easy.
That's how they get you.
And she got us.
She's
All right.
perfect.
Looks like Michelle is pulling up the document. And Michelle, this document was received when?
This was presented at the Finance and Audit Committee in October.
So my guess is there's probably been a few that have added to this list since then, but this was what was presented in October.
And Michelle, if you click on that hyperlink, it takes you to their list of endorsements. If anyone wants to see the entire list, it has individuals and a lot of things that aren't really relevant to us, but there's.
Are you guys still seeing that?
Yes, we are, Michelle. Yes.
Yeah.
So I can
Scroll
switch.
down. Oops, now we're not seeing.
Oh, no, it's because I have the website pulled up here. Just a second.
The reason I was asking this question is because I've noticed on some of the, I'll call them brooks and streams, there's some new signage out. And it's designating like this is a feeder stream to Easter Lake. And we all know some of the issues at Easter Lake. And one of the priorities, as I understand it, of this fund will support some of the cleanup going on at Easter Lake, which should be a major priority, I would think, for the city of Des Moines. So that's what led me back to my old notes, and I didn't see City of Des Moines on here. So I didn't mean to, I will support this resolution. I just think it would be great if one of our larger communities of Easter Lake would be supported by the City of Des Moines. That's the whole reason I was asking.
I appreciate that. Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Now remind me, Michelle, have we had a motion on this or did I jump the?
We have had a motion in a second.
We have had a motion in a second. Okay.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
Well, I see Tom's name on here. Tom, can you answer the City of Des Moines question? And he's on the Zoom. Or I'm sorry, Peter. Okay, moving ahead, sorry.
Moving ahead. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll have Michelle record a vote.
Ashburn,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Muns.
Yes.
All right. Item 3L, this is the item involving legal services. We had an RFP out. We've discussed this a couple times and there's been a recommendation made. So Ted, I'll let you provide the timeline, please.
Thank you, Graham. And I want to start by apologizing for the confusing memo I crafted here. I clearly left some legacy language in there. But we did receive, we requested proposals some number of months ago from legal firms around the metro, and we were very comprehensive in our request, trying to ensure that folks were aware. We sent it directly to a number of firms, and then we also posted. We did receive 5 proposals back some number of months ago. And as stated in the memo here, the board's Finance and Audit Committee, which consisted of Sue and Joel, and the CEO and CFO, Amy and I, served as the review committee for those proposals. There's an unfortunate sentence there that says a committee of the board consisting of the chair and vice chair and the CEO. That was, ignore that, please. I apologize for that. Cut and paste error on my part, frankly. But the committee, we reviewed the proposals, and based on the information contained in the proposals and kind of the weight of the evidence there, the committee is bringing a recommendation to the board today to continue with the firm of Dickinson, McNamara, Tyler, and Hagan, PC, and to designate John Landy as legal counsel to the board. There are some specific reasons given there: quality of the service, ease of accessibility, continuity of record, and the absence of conflicts of interest. We also are recommending a couple of other things. One is that the committee recommends that a process be implemented for annual review of legal services by the board or members of the board, possibly a committee of the board, to ensure that there's ongoing communication between the legal team and members of the board, opportunity for feedback and discussion, and that the board legal services proposals be sought on a regular interval. We haven't specified the regular interval, but something not to exceed 5 years. So those are recommendations that came out of the committee's review of the proposals for consideration by the board today.
So with that, I'm seeking a motion designating John Landy of the firm of Dickinson, Mackman, Tyler, and Hagan PC as legal counsel to the Board of Waterworks Trustees of the City of Des Moines, Iowa, effective January 1st, 2022. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments or questions on this item?
I'd like to make a comment. I really appreciate the leadership on this subcommittee from Joel. As an attorney, I think he was able to provide some interesting insight into what a new firm could and could not do in regards to switching costs and continuity of business. And as we weighed the various options, I just want to say there was not a proposal that absolutely wowed us, that made us want to go further. And I think that's important for this board to know. So anyway, Joel, thank you for your leadership and getting that, passing the bar and taking the lead on this. I think your direction and the questions that you asked were extremely helpful.
You're very kind. I don't know how much help I was, but I was glad to be part of the process, and I would echo your comments and add that I've been very pleased with the legal services we've received. And I agree, I was not blown away by any other proposal, and saw kind of issues with each of them, whether they were conflicts or fee structures or the team presented in the other proposals. So happy to move forward with our current firm. And I'll also add, I think we have a great opportunity here to begin working with John as our primary counsel, and with Rick providing services as well. I think in a lot of cases we wouldn't have that kind of handoff period where we can, start to work with our new primary contact and have our former attorney also, providing a backstop. So I think that'll make for a really positive transition period, and I think it's a good opportunity for us. So I'm pleased about that.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'd just like to say, you are right, Joel, and we are fortunate in the fact that Rick is going to continue of counsel and to be around to help us as we move forward. But so I realize this isn't a bidding farewell to Rick, and that he's going to be of counsel with us for the remainder of the year. But Rick, I want to say that we have trudged up many hills, sometimes with you holding the flag, and sometimes with you pushing us up the hill from behind. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate your service to this board over the years. It's been a pleasure to work with you, even when you and I may have disagreed on items from time to time. I think that's what's healthy about a relationship like this. And you have been of service to this entity for far longer than I've been a part of it. But your work, both in front of and behind the scenes, does not go unnoticed.
Thank you, Graham. It's been an honor and a privilege, and remains so.
Absolutely. And John, I too look forward to working even more closely with you. I've come to respect you over the years and your work with Des Moines Waterworks. I think we're going to benefit greatly by having you move into the chair and provide us even more direct advice. You've been helpful in the second chair, but in first chair, I look forward to that as well.
I as well, and thank you for the opportunity.
That's great. And John, so now I'm going to get right to it, and obviously the motion has to pass first, but the one thing that I do want you to pay close attention to is the recommendations that were suggested by the committee, and that is that we conduct an annual review. And I'm going to kind of put that on your shoulder to remind us to do that and to make sure that that happens. And even though it's slightly awkward, that you also remind this board, because many of us may likely be gone from this board by that time, that 5-year window closes, and that there's there should be a trigger point for this board to consider whether it's time to put out another RFP or not. And I realize that's awkward because that's directly impacts you, but I hope that you will make sure that those things keep on track, the annual and the 5-year trigger.
Absolutely. We'll always observe the terms of the engagement.
Yep. So thanks for that. And I look forward to working with you. Anything else? So with that, I ask Michelle to record the vote.
Ashburn,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to both Rick and John, and thank you for continuing to serve us. So with that, we move to item 3M, and Ted, I'll just let you kind of take the lead on this and then see who else has anything to say. This is the discussion on regionalization.
Yeah, Graham, thank you. We put this on the agenda simply to offer the opportunity to provide a couple of updates on things that are going on. I think the board is aware that we had met as a micro group, an adjusted micro group to some extent with Graham and Diane being at the first meeting, kind of hammered through the remaining open items. We had updated the outcomes document and sent that to the group for their consideration, and also sent them a founding resolution for consideration. And then we met as a micro group, again, a somewhat adjusted micro group with Andrea sitting in. Graham and Andrea, Amy and I met with the group yesterday to talk about the updated outcomes document and the founding resolution. No significant issues or no specific issues were identified with either one of those documents, although I think that the other entities are interested in having a little bit more time to review. But we did discuss that it is our intent to have the documents updated, specifically the outcomes document and the resolution, so that we can begin to share those hopefully by the end of next week. That would be the end of the first week in November. There was discussion about the 3 utility managed boards taking the resolution, the founding resolution, basically the resolution of intent to participate in development of this regional entity by the end of this year. So very soon, within the next couple of months, having those approved by the board. And we had some thought that might actually happen in November. And so hearing that it was more likely going to be December was a little different than we had expected. Graham, I think, did a great job of sharing perspectives on that. And we did ultimately agree that it would be appropriate for me to begin to reach out to city managers from the wholesale communities and talk to them about where we are and how we can bring them along and bring them forward. And I have had an opportunity to reach out to many, talk to only 2 so far, but those being Waukee and Clive, and Matt was on. I don't see him right now, but good discussions, tremendous interest. And Matt specifically indicated that he thought if the 3 board managed utilities passed such a resolution, that would speak volumes and it would bring a lot of people to the table fairly quickly. So that was a positive outcome from today that I heard. Tim Mormon was also very positive. He wants to meet right away. He and his mayor We've already scheduled a meeting for the 17th of November to go and visit with them. Both of them had indicated to me that they already have been in conversations with representatives from PFM who are very engaged in the financial analysis that we're doing on behalf of West Des Moines and Urbandale. They didn't express any significant concerns, and in fact, spoke very favorably of the financial model, kind of the upfront financial model that we have recommended most recently through Graham's suggestion. So we're moving along. Always takes longer than I expect, but we have some marching orders here to get the outcomes document updated, the founding resolution reviewed and updated for possible consideration, or likely or hopefully consideration in December. That's our goal. Graham, Andrea, Amy, you were all at the meeting. What else would you add to that update?
Yeah, Amy, I'm interested to know if you have anything to add to this.
Not really. I think that we're all just interested in making progress, you know, as Ted said. Things take longer. And I know on our side of the table, we were just expressed that we were very eager to carry forward, make decisions for the benefit of all of our customers, frankly, including our wholesale customers. So that's certainly what we are pushing for as staff.
Excellent. Andrea was kind of a last minute ad. I was glad she was there, and I'm going to look there for her comments. I was glad she was there for a couple of reasons. One, kind of a new set of eyes and ears, if you will, in the conversation with some of these people. And also the fact that, you know, Andrea is likely to be chair as regionalization takes effect. And so it's important for her to start to build relationships with all of these players. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Andrea. You had a little bit to absorb quickly there yesterday, but what your thoughts were.
Yeah, no, I appreciated having the opportunity to put some faces to the names that I've heard so often from Diane and Sue and others as the regionalization conversations have been unfolding. You know, echoing what's been said, I think we're all interested in seeing things move forward and continue to progress. And I think that was conveyed yesterday to those around the table, that you know, to keep this momentum going as we come to this point of looking at resolutions and moving to the next stages of building out that 28E agreement, and not wanting to drag that part out. And so I'll be I'm hopeful that based on what I was hearing yesterday, that we'll have those resolutions by the end of the year. And I appreciate hearing Ted's update of the conversations he's been having and what those resolutions impacts will be for the rest of the communities, and see that as a sign that things will continue to progress in a timely manner.
Thank you for that. I think Ted and Andrea are both politely referring to my frustration that I shared at the end of yesterday's meeting. Not that it was anything that strong, but I did express my frustration that I thought we were a little bit closer between the three entities of passing these resolutions than we are. I understand that West Des Moines in particular has a number of steps they still have to complete before they can sign on to this. But that being said, the productive part of that discussion was an acknowledgement that Ted is going to have the discussions that he referred to keep the other potential participants in regional governance informed of where we are. And I think that is going to be helpful. You know, I think I reflected on that meeting yesterday, and you know, my personal frustration. I think that and I think John Landy and Rick Mom, who are involved in negotiations like this more frequently than I am, understand when you get to this final quarter, you know, you get to the line, it's the hard part, right? I mean, it's where you do get the most frustrated. You want things to happen immediately, but it really is the hard work. I mean, the hard work that that Rick and John are doing, but the hard work that Rick in particular is doing right now, writing, putting this all in the 2080 and in the coordinating schedules is difficult. I guess what I'm saying is bear with me and help me. And I'll do the same for you as board members to realize that frustration isn't always helpful, that we have to figure out, we have to be the ones to lead on this at Des Moines Waterworks. We are the current regional provider. We have to be the ones to lead and make sure that this regional governance happens. And that's why the path forward that we walked out of yesterday of this meeting, upon reflection, is the right one. Ted, as CEO, is going to lead. He is going to go out and he is going to have these conversations with his counterparts and other governmental leaders throughout the community to share where we are and to get feedback from them about what they need in order to make decisions when the time comes. Some of them are going to need more in-depth information and different information than others. So Ted taking the time to go out and gather that and respond to that is important. It's going to be some of the most important work Ted does over the next couple of months. And I think that a discussion that this board is going to have probably in the next couple of months, when we talk about and we begin to review in detail the 2080 as it's drafted, and think about how are we going to present this to the communities that are going to sign this and what the strategy is going to be. That's going to be important. But what I walked away from yesterday understanding was that while we have to be open and listen, and we need to allow others to participate in the process, it is imperative that Des Moines lead on this. We have been, but we need to continue to lead on this. And if a West Des Moines or a Urbandale or Waukee or pick your community isn't quite ready and they want more information, it's incumbent on us to get it to them. But not wait, not to let the process get stalled. It's every bit as important for us to make sure that we keep moving this process forward and not get bogged down in the mud, if you will, I guess what I said to Ted yesterday, maybe it was after the meeting, that we not get in our own way, that we not start wondering about all the things that can go wrong. It's our jobs to figure out the strategy to make it go right. So I've talked too long, but my point being that I think that there's a lot of weight on Ted's shoulders. He has a lot to do over the next few months, but he clearly understands it. He got to work today making those calls, and I look forward to his reports back to us. Is that an unfair characterization, Ted?
No, I think that's a very fair characterization. I look forward to making the calls. I've been wanting to bring the rest of the communities in, and they want to come in and they're anxious and interested. And I'm sure I'll get calls back from the other folks here in the next day or so. And I look forward to bringing that information back to the group.
Graham, I'm glad you brought up something about we want to be careful not to muddy the water. And you and I had talked a few months ago about the whole community relations committee structure. I think we put that in place, my understanding, when we were at the very beginning of discussions. And I would suggest until these ongoing negotiations, until we say we are done, that we cancel that meeting. There's at this point, the things you bring forward would be coming forward to the full board, not to a committee. And I mentioned that to Ted, not only because I have a conflict with the November meeting, but just I think we want to be very clear and not have suburban customers thinking they need to tune in on that meeting when the negotiations are happening now with you and Diane and Ted.
I get that. And one thing, and this is a little unrelated but related, Sue, is one of the things we did discuss again yesterday was the need for a communications plan and how we communicate with other external entities, maybe not signing partners, but other external entities. We all realize that's important. That's not the time. We're not quite to that point yet, but that's something that's on the agenda. Ted's working on having a technical committee, if you will, that is led by Des Moines Waterworks to begin pulling together the technical pieces of this, which will help in the formation of those schedules that accompany the 28E. All of that is a complicated and difficult process, but again, to repeat myself, it's incumbent on Des Moines Waterworks to lead on those issues, and we're going to do so. Rick, I don't think you have anything to add. I'm not asking you, but do you have anything to update on where you are in the drafting process?
I don't think so. I think we have a pretty robust start to a draft, and it requires some staff vetting and improvement, and we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks.
So just to recap, there is a strong interest. We have a strong interest, and we're going to continue to push having resolutions passed by this board, by the West Des Moines Waterworks Board, by the Urbandale Water Utility Board, resolutions that say, we are committed. Obviously, these resolutions aren't binding in the fact that they say we are going to sign the 2080 or 28F, but that we're committed to this process. I think that is an important step. We're going to push forward on getting those passed as soon as the entities can. I think this board will be in a position to do so at our December meeting, and I hope the others will follow after that. Ted will give the opportunity for other communities to pass the resolutions as well. We're not saying you have to pass these resolutions, but we will encourage them to do so. Again, some of them may feel they need a lot more information before they can do so. But I think that the act of having those resolutions passed is meaningful because it moves the process forward. And that process, again, and I know all of us are tired of moving the deadlines, but the deadlines, the deadline is becoming more and more critical. It is, look at our rate discussion today. I mean, the clock has already started ticking on next year's rate setting process. It's important, if not vital, that we have some sort of resolution on the establishment of regional governance by the time we set rates next year. This board is going to be faced with a critical decision on whether to accept the Raftelis model or not a year from today. So that clock is one of the many that are driving this. But for all of those reasons we discussed, our investments in capital improvements, everything else we do, this decision on regionalization has to be made in 2022. The seating of the regional board may not happen until 2023, but a decision by this entity and the partnering entities has to be made in 2022. That I think at this point is a clock that this is one clock that's not going to be able to be pushed into another year. Agreed, Ted?
I do agree with that, Graham. And I think that as we're, there's a date, a drop dead date, I would call it, in the resolution that says, if we haven't gotten this done by such and such a date, and Amy and I discussed that today, our feeling is that date needs to be early enough in the year of 2022 that we can make rate decisions going forward for 2023, as you said. So I'm optimistic that the board managed utilities will be able to pass a resolution in the near term, and that will be very powerful for the other communities. It sounds to me like some of them are already aware of the financial considerations and the modeling. That's a huge step forward. The rest of it is easier to explain, I think. So I'm optimistic, but absolutely the decision has to be made in 2022.
I mean, you hear the frustrations of people like Mayor Lorenz and Ankeny and others about, their need to have resolution on this. I agree with them. And while this resolution, I will say it in a non-binding manner that we intend to do this by, in 2022, there is going to become a moment next year where this board is likely to have to take a vote on if if regionalization doesn't happen by X, a particular date, we're going to move on. We're not there yet, but I'm just saying that it's becoming clearer and clearer to all of us involved that that fixed date is going to happen without setting it today.
I think that's fair.
And it happens in 2022.
Yes.
Joel, Diane, Sue, Andrea, anything else questions, comments on this item?
No, I generally agree with what's been said. I think having resolutions for other communities to consider will be a great step. It's time for our community members to feel and be vested in this process. So full speed ahead.
Excellent. All right. If we can, we'll move on from item 3M. This goes to our information items. If I am correct, the only committee that met this month was Finance and Audit. Is that correct, Ted?
That is correct.
So Finance and Audit, I think we've covered all those items, but tell me if there's something needs to be reported.
It was a full one, I recall. I think, yeah, we hit all the items, cost of service, rate setting, and the budget. And we received a number of comments from our community, our wholesale customers and others. And I think we covered all those issues again here today.
Excellent. Bill Stowe Memorial Committee, I'll have more to report later, as I've told you. The Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden continues to move forward. They have signed a new agreement. The board at Botanical Garden approved a new agreement with the city of Des Moines, which was financial and partnership wise. It was a good agreement moving forward. It puts the Botanical Garden on solid footing moving forward. If you haven't been over there, you should go over there soon. The expansion gardens they're making progress and will be open soon. So those are all good things. Waterworks Park Foundation Board, Joel or Andrea, is there anything else to add on that?
I'm gonna have to defer to Joel on this one. I was not at their last meeting.
Where were you? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, being lazy.
I also was unable to attend. I'm sure my excuse is much better than Andrea's, whatever my excuse may have been. So I'll have to defer to Mike.
Unfortunately, Mike is not able to join us today.
Well, we can follow up on that later if there's something.
I think that sounds like a good plan.
All right, so Drake University research update.
Yeah, Graham, if I might, Peter Levi is here with us today, and I will say that every time we plan to have a guest speaker, we seem to have a marathon board meeting. Peter, sorry about the late hour here and the time it took for us to get to you, but Peter he's a professor of environmental science and sustainability at Drake University and has partnered with us on a number of projects over the period of time that he's been at Drake. Has some really exciting things going on, and we invited him to share some of that information with the board, because I think you'll find some of it interesting. I don't know what all Peter's going to cover today, but there's been work on water chemistry, bacteria in Walnut and 4 Mile Creeks, the urban creeks here in town, some denitrification and nitrate loss in the Raccoon River. There's a whole kind of suite of things. But Peter, in the interest of time, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you dive in.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Ted. And I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today. As Ted said, I'm a professor of environmental science and sustainability at Drake. I should be sharing a PowerPoint with you now, and I'll make that into a big screen. I wanted to give my colleague Alyssa a chance to introduce herself as well. She's going to be presenting a little bit of data too today. So go ahead, Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Gerhart, and I'm a research assistant that works in the stream ecology lab at Drake with Peter.
Fantastic. So when Jen asked for us to present. I thought that was great. And I told Alyssa, let's do this in 15 minutes. So we want to share, I just started a timer too. So we've been doing a lot of research here in Central Iowa, and I really appreciate this opportunity to chat with you all. I wanted to call our short presentation today, Stories from Streams, Assessing Central Iowa's Impaired Waters. I don't think we have to, beat around the bush. Iowa's waters are somewhat impaired. I want to acknowledge that at our Stream Ecosystem Ecology Lab at Drake, we've been training undergraduates now for 6 years. And I've had the pleasure to work with about 24 different undergrads out in the field. Here we're in 4 Mile Creek, Walnut Creek, and Alleman Creek. So we get out there a lot, especially in the summer, and doing a lot of field work. I also wanted to acknowledge that we've been supported by a whole host of local partners, organizations, and especially highlighted up there in red in the upper right, Des Moines Waterworks. You all have been fantastic in supporting our research, and the goal of our research is to, of course, inform management and to move the needle, whatever needle that is a little bit, on getting objective quality science out there through publications, presentations, and the like. So with that, just one slide for introduction then. Of course, I love to study streams because streams really tell the story of the landscape. And I appreciate this image taken from NASA back in May of 2012, because it really shows how human-dominated our landscape here in the Midwest is. Southern Minnesota, most of Iowa over into Indiana, and I'm sorry, Illinois, and then Indiana, as well as eastern Nebraska is very agriculturally dominated. In the areas that don't have agriculture, of course, there's urban areas. And so in general, the Midwest is very human dominated. The water resources across Iowa, especially if you've ever chatted with Susan Heathcote, who's a great colleague of mine on the Iowa Rivers Revival Board, she always makes the strong point that Iowa is, of course, a river state. And so this second map I'm showing here demonstrates how ubiquitous rivers are in the state and across the state. They are flowing across this landscape. And as they do so, they incorporate materials from the landscape, and therefore I feel are great storytellers in terms of the health of the ecosystems as well as the landscapes surrounding the streams. So in the Stream Ecosystem Ecology Lab at Drake, we address broad questions. Here are 3 that I'm just putting up there. How impaired are Iowa's streams and rivers? What is the ecological function of these waterways? So how are they performing? We address this a lot by comparing streams in Iowa to those elsewhere from either other publications or other research we've done. And do conservation practices on the landscape or in the stream improve water quality? And what we want to do for you today is sort of tell 3 small stories. Each story has just an introduction slide, a method slide, and a data slide. So as Ted said, we're doing a lot of work right now in Central Iowa and Polk County. We're doing some of that with a drone. So I want to, Alyssa will share a little bit with you about how we're investigating water quality by the meter and minute. Then I will talk a little bit about how much nitrate is being removed from the river naturally through denitrification, sort of this idea of putting a river in a bottle and seeing how much nitrate is taken out of it. And then finally, Alyssa will mention some data on our recent research with the watershed management authorities in 4 Mile and Walnut Creeks, where we're doing some science at the intersection of water quality and public health. For that especially, we've leaned a lot on Katie in the Des Moines Waterworks Lab, as well as Lisa, Terry, and of course, Jeff Mitchell. They've all been fantastic supporters of our research and great resources. So with that, we'll start with the first story.
Thank you again for having us here today. So first, we're going to look at how a novel drone is helping to investigate water quality. Here is our study reach. It's a 2.4 kilometer or 1.5 mile stretch of Alleman Creek in Polk County. This creek flows into 4 Mile, which is a tributary of the Des Moines River, which obviously flows into the Mississippi River, and that then goes on to influence the water quality in the Gulf of Mexico. So smaller tributaries into these big rivers can be high input contributors at the regional scale, and tile drains can be high input contributors at the local scale into these smaller rivers. And the tile drains on that map are indicated with those yellow dots.
I should apologize that Alyssa and I hope to be in the same room to do this so she could do her animations. My wife had a positive COVID test, so I am dealing with kids and such at home now. So I do apologize. I'll try to know when Alyssa wants me to advance the slide.
Our study reach has 26 tile drains draining this uniform agricultural landscape. You can see there's agriculture all around. And while there may be little variation in land use, we really wanted to investigate water quality patterns at this local scale. So here is the Aquabot in action, measuring water quality below a tile drain, and there's one downstream of it too. So to measure local scale variability, we use this remote controlled drone called the Aquabot. It's relatively small, about 2 feet wide by 3 feet long. And with 35 pounds of payload, it really holds everything you need for remote sampling. The GPS unit associates every data point with the coordinates it was sampled at, so precise maps are able to be made. A multi-parameter sonde that measures a suite of water quality parameters and a nitrate sensor are attached right there in the center. And the data is actually accessible real time through Wi-Fi, and you can check it on your phone with an app, which is really nice and convenient. The whole system logs about 8 different data points every minute. And at this frequency, hundreds of multi-point samples are collected in one run in one day. So in the interest of time, we're just going to look at nitrate data. This is one of 7 Aquabot runs we've done on Almond Creek and shows the in-stream variability of nitrate. As you can see, it starts off relatively low. So low nitrate, indicated in blue, is still 10.8 milligrams per liter. And the high is up to 12.5 milligrams per liter. So it's not low at any point in the stream. It starts off low and it spikes a little bit right next to the bridge. It goes down again, gets high again towards the middle, and then goes back down with intermittent spikes till the end of the reach. So there's a lot of variability there. Here, the first two, here's the same data graphed. The vertical dashed lines are actually the tile drain locations along the reach that we saw earlier. So the first 2 spikes are actually associated with tile drain inputs, which is really interesting. But the second, with the spike further downstream, is not, which could indicate a high nitrate groundwater input or an unidentified tile, possibly. And all of this is just one parameter from one day. We've done, like I said, 7 Aquabot runs and 8 intensive samplings of this stream. We've also run this Aquabot on the Des Moines River 5 times with the same intensity of sample collection. Okay, so the Aquabot, with its high frequency and fine scale sampling, has revealed that even in uniform landscapes, small streams have highly variable water quality, both at and absent of tile drains. This small stream actually underwent significant changes this year because of a massive conservation effort by Polk County. 24 of the 26 tile drains were converted to saturated buffers this summer. Below is a picture of the installation of a saturated buffer. I believe that's at Alleman, Peter?
Yep.
Yeah, that's at Alleman. In the diagram above, we see what a saturated buffer is. It's, instead of water being diverted directly into the stream, it's diverted into the buffer strip, that it saturates the buffer strip between the stream and the field, and denitrification actually occurs as the water moves slowly through the ground. And we're going to continue to monitor this site and observe the impact of these buffers on water quality patterns and their impacts on denitrification.
Amazing.
So that's just one map that Alyssa showed of course, a lot of parameters across a lot of runs. I want to talk, segueing from how nitrate gets into the stream there, I want to talk about a little bit regarding what nitrate does once it's in the stream. So when I first arrived here, it was in the throes of the Waterworks lawsuit, and I thought it was some pretty low-hanging fruit research-wise, given that no one, even our colleagues at the Hydraulic Research Center at the University of Iowa, have ever measured denitrification in the streams and rivers of Iowa. And so I set out to measure denitrification at various locations in the Raccoon River. And denitrification is a really important process because it is the only process that permanently removes nitrate from streams. Algae can take nitrate up, but the algae are still in the stream. So that nitrogen is still in the stream as well. And this is a microbial process that nitrate is converted to dinitrogen gas. We would love denitrification to happen because we are swimming in nitrogen gas, right? About 75% of the atmosphere is nitrogen gas. So 3 out of your 4 breaths would be pure nitrogen gas if you could divide the atmosphere such. And there's some different intermediate steps. What's important about these intermediate steps that the microbes do is that nitrous oxide here nearly at the end is a very potent greenhouse gas. So denitrification is good if it goes all the way to completion in the chemical reaction, but it could be really bad if it only goes partway because nitrous oxide is a potent greenhouse gas. So what we did is we collected sediment and water in the field. Here we are on the South Raccoon. We then processed these in the lab. As I said, we kind of did river in a bottle. We put sediments and river water in small bottles and incubated them through time. There's my daughter helping with the colored pencils. And then we allowed the microbes within the bottles a 6-hour incubation where they were able to denitrify any nitrate that was in the water. So I just want to show you a little bit of the results. Again, we have copious amounts of data for any of these stories we're sharing with you today. What I'm showing here, these data are from 2016 and 17. This is at the Van Meter Bridge over the Raccoon River. And you can see that the export of nitrate, which in this figure is metric tons per day, goes up very high in the spring, right, as we expect. There's a very seasonal pattern to nitrate in Iowa and in agricultural streams in general. And 2017 was a low flow year. So you can see that nitrate export in the fall, late summer and fall of 2017 was really low. When we look at denitrification rates here on the bottom, you can see that they were low for much of the summer of 2016 through the winter and spring. So microbes are, of course, very temperature, the processes they do are very temperature dependent. Warmer water allows them to metabolize faster. So you can see a sudden increase in denitrification in the summer, and then it stays higher during the summer and fall of 2017. However, there's a bit of a mismatch here, right? So the amount of nitrate removed in the spring is low. However, that's the time when we see the most nitrate moving downstream. Then when denitrification rates are high, we see relatively low loads of nitrate. And so ultimately what happens, as we know from a lot of research, most of this nitrate travels far down the Raccoon River through the Des Moines and the Gulf of Mexico, and the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. What I'm plotting here is the meters or distance that nitrate travels. These locations, the blue is on the South Raccoon, the yellow is on the North Raccoon at Minburn, and the red is that station at Van Meter. You can see that this also follows that seasonal pattern. Nitrate is traveling very far, especially in the late fall and winter into the spring. And then it's not traveling quite as far in the summer when we have low loads and high denitrification rates. However, I'd have you note that the dotted line here is the length of the Raccoon River, the full length of the Raccoon River in meters. And this dashed line is the full length of the Mississippi River from Lake Itasca, Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico below New Orleans. So this is a log scale. So nitrate from Iowa is traveling a long, long distance. Again, nothing new to this audience, but we actually have data now that demonstrate this. We can also, as I said, we do some comparative work. So when we compare the relative demand of nitrate in headwater agricultural streams, sort of what Alyssa was just showing where we run the Aquabot, you can see that the comparison I want to make here is that the relative demand of nitrate is far higher in small streams than the big river. In fact, 10,000 times higher in small streams than the big river. So once this nitrate hits large rivers, it is going downstream. There's very little demand for it in larger rivers and streams. So the good news of this is that natural processes can remove nitrate naturally. However, the extremely high loads of nitrate in central Iowa and much of the agricultural Midwest saturates the ability of bacteria to do that, which then leads to the social and economic costs, both here in Des Moines, as you all know too well, as well as our neighbors downstream.
So now we're going to look at the WMA projects of Walnut Creek and 4 Mile. So WMAs were of course established to address water quality issues following watershed boundaries. The WMAs in central Iowa, the project we're doing, we're examining the influence of specific land use types like agricultural areas shown in the green dots, areas where suburban expansion is happening pretty rapidly, the orange dots, and versus those where there's established urban life, like in Des Moines, which are shown by the gray dots. We monitor Walnut and 4 Mile Creek with a stationary sensor at each of these 6 sites, collecting 6 parameters each every 10 minutes. But thanks to the incredible support of Waterworks and Jeff, Terry, Katie, and Lisa, all at the lab who run our weekly samples, we have a more complete picture of stream health with physical, chemical, and biological data. Currently, with the ICON project, working to improve Iowa's waterways, water quality is even more important. More people are going to be out enjoying these beautiful streams, and water quality and potential health risks are really important factors when determining whether to recreate. For the sake of time, we're going to be focusing on E. coli data. So first, there's a picture of our 4 Mile agricultural site. Some cows are hanging out there, having a good time, taking a bath. Here are the E. coli data. They start in from May 2019. Again, the ag points are green, the suburban points are orange, and the urban points are gray. There's some good news about the E. coli data in that 88 out of 417, or about 21% of the E. coli samples were 0, so that's good. Unfortunately, less than half of the samples were below the EPA standard concentration of 235 mpm per 100 milliliters. Indicated that EPA standard threshold is indicated with a black line across both streams. Really wish I could point here. And note that this graph is in log scale. So that line is at 235, but those points, there are points above 10,000 in both Walnut and 4 Mile Creek during the times of peak recreation in the summer months. So that's really something to note. So actually up to 73 to 96% of samples were above the standard. This distribution shows that July had the highest percent of samples being above the standard, which is the time where you would expect people to be enjoying streams, being out. It's hot. People want to get into the water, you know. But even in the winter months, February, March, December, January, there are still samples above the EPA limit, and it would be good to be able to predict these spikes with a more frequently collected parameter. Again, here's a log scale. This is also a log scale graph looking at just summer data. The E. coli is on the y-axis, and the turbidity or cloudiness of the water is on the x-axis. Our turbidity sensors, again, measure a point every 10 minutes. And this graph shows it appears to be a predictor of E. coli concentrations for the suburban and urban sites. You can see that it goes up. E. coli concentrations go up as turbidity goes up, but in the agricultural sites, there's no relationship. It goes down. E. coli goes down as turbidity increases. And some of the highest points actually occur at low or moderate turbidity above 10,000. So it's not quite a predictor, but it could be. Again, with public safety, it's a top concern. It's important to be aware that water quality is the poorest in summer months when recreation is highest in demand. And we've also seen that E. coli could possibly be E. coli could also possibly be predicted by turbidity, which would be nice. And of course, we've also seen the different land uses impact stream ecosystems differently. For example, like just other things that we've found, that nitrate is higher in agricultural areas and chloride is higher in urban areas. And of course, this study is not finished yet, and we'll be analyzing data from this past summer and next spring to see if patterns of E. coli remain consistent, and other parameters that we've gathered these last few years.
So in just big conclusion, going back to the streams telling us stories here, these are just, again, 3 small vignettes of much larger research projects in collaboration with those local partners, as well as the Department of Energy with that Aquabot. And so you saw some stories from headwater agricultural streams with the Aquabot. 4 Mile and Walnut Creek have varying levels of impairment. And of course, the Raccoon River here, this shot taken from the confluence with the Des Moines River, is able to process some nitrate, but not a lot. So my overall message would be that streams can do things. They aren't just passive conveyors of material, but in this landscape with so much agriculture, streams need more help. That we can't just focus on streams for solutions such as saturated buffers or conservation efforts in the stream. We need to move out of the stream and into that landscape to really move the needle on water quality in Iowa. I would welcome any questions now, or I include my contact information up here. Of course, Ted, Jeff, Jen, all have my contact information too, and I'd be happy to discuss any of these topics further with any of you over coffee, or with more slides. We have lots of data. So thanks for your time today, and again, very many thanks for your support of our research at Drake.
Peter, I just want to highlight how cool it is that you are doing the Aquabot. And by the way, being a water nerd, that's the coolest thing I ever saw, that little Aquabot. That is amazing. But doing that right in that Almond Creek where they are doing all those saturated buffers, and doing it before they put the buffers in, and now doing it after the buffers, which is another project that we're supporting and promoting. That's going to be some of the coolest information from my perspective, knowing that there's tons and tons of data coming out of this. But also the work that you're doing that can inform the river trails, the ICON project. I mean, there's so many really high profile things going on right now that this data is going to inform. Really amazing research and an unbelievably rich data set when you're talking about samples every 10 minutes continuously. Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ted. And I'd say that, what Polk County is doing with your support too, with these saturated buffers, if we're going to see improvements in water quality, we've taken, like Alyssa said, 24 of those 26 tiles have been removed. If we're going to see if that works, we're going to see it here. So now we just have to hope that it actually rains. It's going to rain more tomorrow, right? If it actually rains and we actually have flow in Almond Creek during 2022. So fingers crossed for water that we could actually study.
So that kind of spins off to one of my questions. Can you remind me, who all are you sharing this information with, or getting your data out to across the metro or across the state?
Yeah, great question, Andrea. Thanks. So we're meeting regularly with the WMA group. So we present a report annually to the WMA group. And as Alyssa said, we'll finish up our 3-year study in the end of May. I'm working on a manuscript right now about the nitrate removal in the Raccoon River. So that it's in revision. So I hope to get that published, through the scientific peer review process shortly. and I will be sharing that. You know, it was a great honor to move here and to be able to talk to Bill, you know, early in my tenure at Drake, and you know, as the lawsuit was going, and he was just such an inspiration to me. And you know, I would often tell him, you know, I could study that. I could tell you how much nitrate's being removed by the raccoon, but I can already tell you it's not much. So I'm excited to finally get those data out and published through the peer review process. Other than that, you know, I do some presentations like this, right? So when given the opportunity to present, I take that and try to share the good word of what's happening in Central Iowa.
Well, I appreciate your all's work as a environmental science and environmental policy Drake graduate. I'm
Awesome.
proud to see this work being done through Drake University and the information that you're being able to share with others. So thank you for all of this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrea.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Melissa and Peter? I've got 3 quick ones. Melissa, how long does it take when you do the you run the aquabot, you know, down Allman or someplace like that? You do a day's sampling. How long does it take to gather those samples?
That stretch takes about 4 hours.
Yeah, so it's time consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm with Ted. I'm a bit of a nerd, and I love the idea of being able to grab these samples like that. And Peter, you may not know the answer to this question, but the stationary testing sites that you have, what's the cost to procure those and operate those? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so those do not have a nitrate sensor. I know I've been chatting with John Norwood a lot. He wants to know, you know, how much nitrate's coming into Polk County, how much is going. Sensor technology is just getting cheaper and cheaper. You can get a really high quality nitrate sensor for less than $10,000 now. You need to have the box to hook it up to, and that data logger, as Alyssa described on the Aquabot. Those sensors that we have in 4 Mile and Walnut, those are only in quotes here, about $7,000, but they do not have a nitrate sensor. Nitrate is a bit more of an advanced technology. Those sensors, as Alyssa described, are getting us dissolved oxygen, turbidity, conductivity, temperature. You could get pH, you could get chlorophyll. So sensor technology is pretty cheap, you know, when you compare the cost of, you know, a private contractor or a consulting firm to go and get data. And so, yeah, just
so those are those are a little over $15,000 if you're going to get a nitrate sensor on them, the ones you have today.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And again, that's getting a little bit cheaper and a little bit better along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's important that hopefully that technology improves because we get more sensors. The more data we have, the better.
Yeah,
and,
I will.
You know,
I will note that Iowa is the most monitored state in the union. You know, I mean, we have a water quality problem, but there are more nitrate sensors in the state of Iowa than any other state. And unfortunately, that's because we need them, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that we act on them, but that's a whole other
exactly.
topic. A little bit to Andrea's question. Have you shared this information with the folks that are moving forward with the Water Trails project, this interest in increasing recreation in our rivers? Are they aware of your numbers and your research?
Yeah, so I serve on the scientific advisory board for the Water Trails, and I've shared some information and data with Hannah Inman, the executive director of Great Outdoor Foundation. But again, I've offered like, hey, I'd love to present. Yeah, I think it's a complex conversation, right? You know, what comes first, getting people in the water or cleaning it up, right? So.
Listen, interest in our rivers is gonna help get raise people's concerns about the quality of water. So that's all good.
Absolutely.
Well, we're sorry that we kept you both so late, that our meeting went so long. If I would have been paying attention, I would have moved you up in the agenda. So thanks for hanging in there with us.
Well, that's fine. Thanks for this opportunity. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to chat again as we get more data. So maybe in the spring we can come back with some more information.
We'd love to have you, Peter and Alyssa. Thank you.
All right, thanks much.
All right, we're going to move into, we have external affairs update and CEO updates, and I'm going to encourage you both to be quick. Jen?
I'll be quick. That's a hard act to follow, but I just have 2 things I want to talk about today. Number one is tours that we have been hosting here at Waterworks at the Floor Drive Treatment Plant, or educational visits. So we partnered with the Polk County Water and Land Legacy Group to host tours here on 2 different days for the candidates for Des Moines City Council. And so that was cool. And thanks to some of you who came out and showed interest, but we, I think all but one of the candidates actually came out. So that was really cool. So we got to tell our story, and so did the Water and Land Legacy folks. That was a great partnership. And then as we run up to the legislative session now in January, we have been doing outreach about water quality to our state legislators. And we actually had a couple of rural legislators send an invitation to their committees to come and tour Waterworks, which is a real interesting twist that hasn't happened before. So we had a group of state senators out last week and had a wonderful dialogue with them, and Ted did a great job of presenting to them. And I felt like we really had some interesting breakthroughs there. We have another group coming this Friday. The second thing that I would say is that you are all aware that we have undertaken a relationship with Woodbury Associates, which is a government relations firm, which has ties to Iowa, but is based in Washington, D.C. We've had a couple of meetings with them, and I'm excited about the progress that we think we might be able to make on several federal issues. Probably maybe more than ever, the utility has a lot at stake at the federal level, let's put it that way. So a couple of things. Number one, that giant behemoth infrastructure bill that's rumbling its way around Congress is supposed to move on October 31st in one way or another. So I would just say that since we are an independent municipal utility, we are not an eligible applicant for infrastructure funds and some of the funding that's been coming out. So a lot of some of the funding that's been available to counties and cities has passed us by. And so we are hoping to partner with other utilities across the country and do some sort of a sector ask in an infrastructure bill so that we can become some sort of an eligible applicant, which could be pretty exciting if we can get that to happen. And then the second thing with Woodbury, and the last thing I'll report, is that you've been reading a lot about PFAS, and we've talked a lot about it here. So last week, the US EPA released its roadmap for addressing PFAS, and the final drinking water limits or regulations will be released in the fall of 2023. So the Woodbury team told us that there's actually a public comment period coming up in a couple of months. And so we're going to be preparing remarks to register public comment on PFAS on behalf of our drinking water utility. There's several things that we want to be sure are addressed if possible in that roadmap and in legislation. And that is all I have to report today. Thanks, Graham.
Well done. Thank you, Jen. All right, Ted, everything you have to say is important, but you're going to do it quickly.
Agreed. One thing from me today, there's been interesting communication going on in media, social media this week, coming from interesting places, specifically about the amount of available nitrogen that's been left in the watershed this year because of the drought and whatnot, coming from Iowa State and the Iowa corn growers, actually encouraging people to be thoughtful about their nutrient applications, which we think honestly is probably a good thing. I'm not sure what the background there is, but any communication in support of water quality, business as usual is going to result in really high nitrates in the spring if something different isn't done. We did take the opportunity to submit a piece. We don't know if it'll get published or not, but an opinion piece to the Register about the fact that, yeah, that's great, but let's be sure and recognize this is not just a one-year problem. This is an ongoing problem. It's not just a Des Moines Waterworks problem, which is the example they gave. I shared it with all of you. I want to thank Jen and Melissa Walker for helping me put that together, but it was an opportunity for us to tell our story in what we felt was a constructive way, a non-confrontational way on the eve of regionalization here, but just to make a point. And so we took it. But with that, Graham, I will hand it back to you for
excellent
adjournment.
Diane.
Oh, sorry. Ted, will you draw attention to the December board meeting date, please?
Michelle, thank you. Yes, we often choose to move the December board meeting to the third Tuesday instead of the fourth Tuesday because the fourth Tuesday often falls between Christmas and New Year's, which it does this year. And so our December board meeting will be on the third Tuesday, which is December 21st.
Excellent. Thank you. And while we're talking about board meetings, Diane beat us to the punch today and actually showed up in the boardroom, I understand. We went back to virtual meetings when there was a COVID spike earlier this year. Is it the will of the board that we continue meeting via Zoom, or should we return to the boardroom in November or December? Any thoughts on that?
I would say via Zoom, even though I found I can drive there and back in probably under 10 minutes. Because even if we're there, we need to wear masks because that is the policy that Ted's put in place there, which gets uncomfortable for a couple of hours of a meeting like this. So I guess I prefer Zoom.
I'm gonna selfishly say that through the end of the year, I will be home on maternity leave, so Zoom would be a lot easier for me as well.
Well, I think that with newborns in 2 houses too, I think that there's a safety concern there. Potentially two by the end of the year.
Yes.
And Graham, I would.
Yes, my attendance at the mid-December board meeting is tentative.
All right.
Very exciting.
Understood.
Thank you very much.
Was there someone else that was trying to speak?
Graham, John Landy, I would
Please.
just note that we do have available for anybody who wants to attend in person, that the meeting is still streamed live in the boardroom. So that option would still exist for members of the public.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Graham, I
So long
assume,
as they're masked.
right.
Right, complying with all policies.
Graham, I assume committee meetings will continue to be virtual as they have been with the public,
Yes.
with the in-person option. And I believe what I heard discussed earlier was that for the foreseeable future, we are not going to plan to have customer relation committee meetings on the first Tuesday, that those are not necessary for the foreseeable future.
I think that's correct, Ted. I think we'll postpone customer relations unless there's an extra need, if there's another item that comes up that's not related to regionalization that can be handled by customer relations. But what I'm hearing from the board is we're gonna continue this virtual option at least through the end of the year going forward. But I wanted to put that forward just to make sure we were on the same page. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the cause? Seeing none, I'll accept Sue's motion to adjourn. She didn't move, but I think.
So moved.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.